Hello, sister leaders. Dr. Karen here. And look, when I have this red background that I am not alone. I have somebody with me who is just extraordinary, far from ordinary. And so today we are going to talk to another powerful sister leader, and we're going to get all up in her business because I do my internet sleuthing and I'm pretty good at it. And so we're going to find out all about her talents that she used here on this earth. And so, Dr. Tish,
Yes.
welcome to the Sister Leaders Podcast community.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. We'll see if you are honored once we get these questions and we going to dive a little deep. We are excited to learn
Woo!
all about you. And so let's kind of get started. I have here first, my first question is your career spans more than 2 decades in leadership, culture and transformation, and organizational development. What initially drew you to the field of business psychology?
Mm. Yeah, I get excited about this because, in my undergrad, I majored in business administration, right? And so business administration, it runs the gamut in terms of where you specialize. And so when I enrolled, I'm like, okay, where do I want to specialize? I didn't want to do marketing. I didn't want to do finance. I didn't want to do traditional HR. And so in my coursework, I took a class and it was called Organizational Behavior. And when I took that class, I was absolutely hooked. And I went immediately to my professor and I said, where do I get more of this? And so he told me, well, if you're interested in pursuing your master's, then you want to get it in go to Benedictine University in Illinois, and major in organizational behavior with emphasis in org development and human resources. And so that's what I got my master's in, and I've fallen in love with it. It has been my passion, and so much so that I decided to get my PhD in it as well.
Awesome. So we are excited to learn more about your interest in it. And so my next question is, how does a business psychologist view leadership challenges differently than a traditional business consultant?
Ooh. So the beautiful thing about my background is for my PhD, I went to the School of Psychology. So they specialize in psychology, traditional psychology, and of course, business psychology. And I think the difference is a business psychologist really understand not just the infrastructure of business, but we really understand the behavior of the business and the behavior of the people in the business. That's what we study. We study human dynamics and human behavior in the workplace. So when we think about the challenges that many organizations face, a lot of times what presents itself is the people side of it. And so as a business psychologist, I can go in and really understand what's the undercurrent and what's the root of the issues that they're facing by studying behavior of the people and also looking at the behavior of the business.
I like that. I like that. I'm a proponent of, trying to get down to the root cause of
Mhm.
situations. And so it sounds like that you are one who wants to find out the root cause of why we act or do what we act, do, say, or whatever, very similar to that. So let's talk. We like people who develop stuff. We love frameworks and stuff like that. So we got to talk about this legacy blueprint. So
Uh,
tell me what inspired you to launch Legacy Blueprint LLC. How did it
hmm.
come about? What happened?
So there's the long and the short of it. So I'll do a hybrid of it. Um, so I was working for a not-for-profit healthcare organization for quite a while. That's where much of my organizational behavior career was in. And I was in a moment of transition from one healthcare system to another, an elevated position. I was joined the organization as regional director of learning and organizational development. So it was a large healthcare system that I would be responsible for. And so I was in between the opportunities, and I know exactly where I was driving. I was excited about the opportunity. I'm a spiritual person, so this is about to go in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving, and the Lord spoke to me, and He said, daughter, this is the last time you'll ever work for anybody. And I'm thinking, God, first of all, I know that's not me because I'm going to a new opportunity that I'm super excited about. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
God, I don't know what you're saying to me. I got this new opportunity. So let's put that conversation on the shelf for just a little while. So fast forward, my department had been wildly successful, really made lots of amazing changes. And in healthcare, when cuts happen, it's always the non-patient facing departments that get cut. But because my department had added so much value over the years, we never was considered to be on the what they call chopping block. But this time they had to make some severe cuts, and they were told that 20% of non-patient facing department had to be cut. And so my HR VP came to me and said, we're going to have to cut your department. There was three of us. He said, you'll stay, but we're going to have to downsize the other two. And so for me, I started to think, how can I, as one person, have the impact that I want to have in this organization? I'm not going to be able to make the seismic changes, and really impact culture the way that it needs to be with just one person. And so I let my two people go, which was one of the hardest things I had to do as a leader. And then I
Mm-hmm.
took 2 weeks off for work. And in those 2 weeks off, I'm like, okay, let me start looking for something else because I don't know how this is going to work. And I don't want my reputation compromised because an organization made a choice to make these significant cuts. And so while I'm looking, Dr. Hill, that conversation came back to me. And God said, remember, daughter, I told you that you will never work for anybody else. I'm like, God, I know I said let's table that conversation, but okay, I hear you. And so what that meant was, you need to start your own thing. What else could it mean? So instead of
Mm-hmm.
you looking to work for someone else, you need to start exploring starting your own thing. And so in those 2 weeks, I had gotten my company name. I got it licensed through the state. I found a graphic designer to do my logo, to do my website, and so I built my whole business in those 2 weeks that I took off from work. Um, and then a year later, I was able to resign my position to pursue my business full time. So I'm really proud of that, and excited that I had that opportunity to have a choice to say, do I stay internal and work for an organization that has given me great opportunity, or do I step out on faith and do my craft and my genius on my own terms? I chose the latter.
I love it. And what you said is that testimony is confirmation to what I really believe, that when God speaks to us, the direction is the direction. Whether we take it at that time or not, it's going to come back around to us. And so it did come up back around to you,
Mm-hmm.
and where you heard it again, and this time you acted on it. But I really do believe that the direction is always going to be the same, God's goals for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the will of whether or not, when we heed to that, but the direction don't change.
Right.
So that I love that. I love that you went back to that, and you heard them. So let's talk about your 21-year career. And so, what leadership lesson lessons have remained constant throughout your 21-year career despite changes in the workplace? What's been
Mm.
consistent despite any changes in the workplace environment?
So the thing that popped immediately in my mind is the posture of leadership. And the posture of leadership is not positional. And so I've steadfast on it. Even the work that I do with my clients, it's not about the position or the title that you have, but it's your posture in leadership. Do you set a strong vision? Do you have your tools in place to inspire people to want to align with your vision? Are you consistent? Are you kind? And so all of those things, no matter what happens in the workplace, is still the foundation for me when I was internal as well as external. Leaders don't necessarily have to have 50 direct reports to be considered a leader. I feel like leader is also about your ability to influence. And so in my leadership posture, I've chosen the route to be in the a leadership position of influence versus having direct reports that report up through me. So that has been what has been constant for me is the posture and the position of leadership and challenging mental models around what it is. It doesn't mean you have to have a million direct reports. It just means how can you influence?
I love that. I love that. And that's in line with what I believe in too, even though this is not about me, it's about you, because I believe we are here to influence and impact.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I've gotten all the bells and whistles that I desired in my 20s. So I'm a little bit older now. And so my goal, part of my legacy is to influence and impact others so that they can reach their goal quicker with less bumps
Yes.
and bruises than I got when I was finding my way through this place called life. So let's go. I have a subtitle here: Purpose, Profit, and Impact.
Hmm.
You, somewhere in my research, often say purpose is not soft, purpose is strategy with a heartbeat. What does that mean in practical terms for leaders?
Hmm. So purpose is what drives, and I'm going to speak to this from a personal perspective. Purpose for me is what drives everything that I do. But it took me a while to get to a point to understand what my purpose is. And once you get to a knowing, you get to a place of knowing, um, profit and all the other things, it just naturally comes to you. It's the natural byproduct when you're grounded in your purpose. And so part of it too is this journey I had to go through with being bald. It started with be my life was driven by what other people thought. My life was driven by how other people defined what success looks like, what beauty looks like. And that space, that box that I was in, got way too small for me. And it was so uncomfortable. I said, there has to be something bigger than this for me. And so I went on a self discovery journey to understand my purpose. And my purpose is one, not to build my life around people's uninformed opinions about who I am as a person. And so my purpose is to really help organizations and individuals to understand the essence and the core of their being and tap into that and allow everyone around them to experience it unapologetically. That's my purpose. And so and that always that's the underpinning for me, and everything else just naturally flows from that.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk about purpose in organizations. And so, why do some organizations struggle to connect purpose with profitability?
Hmm. I think it's about the leading and the lagging indicators, right? um, I think a lot of times organization focus on focus less on the people who will get them to the profit. And so what I see is organizations don't want to or don't see the importance of building strategy around building their people capital. If you do a sufficient job at building and investing in your people, the profit will come. Because if you invest in those people appropriately, they will go through a wall for you. But if what you lead with is we're just about making money, then the people feel like they're just there to do a thing versus them investing their full selves, their full genius. They're just there to punch a clock and be on their way. And so, and I think that's where organizations mix it up. Now, there are some that say that's just who we choose to be. We choose to only focus on our profit. And where one talent leave, we can find it somewhere else. And that's a strategy, but you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. The organizations that I see that are incredibly successful are the ones that recognize that you can't get to profit unless you do it through your people.
I love that. And you can't be rapping in the middle of my interview. You get what you get and you can't throw a fit because I like that. I like that.
I got
I'm a
that from my
remember.
daughter. My daughter said she used to say that all the time. "Ma, you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit," and it's always stuck with me.
I love that. And so let's talk about those things, a few things that you mentioned, sacrificing one for the other. How can leaders align purpose, performance, and profit without sacrificing one for the other?
And so it is. It's like it's like a three-legged stool in essence, right? You need all three in order for that stool to be sturdy. And so it starts with what's our infrastructure within our organization. So again, organizations that do this well, they have a pillar structure, if you will. So each of their pillars will accommodate purpose, which is mission driven. Performance, how do we measure it? Our profit, what will that look like? And how do we know we've reached it? So one of my organizations I used to work with, they had a pillar for mission, and I grew up in healthcare. So then they had a pillar for patient experience. They had a people pillar where all of their people strategy were aligned in that. They had a financial stewardship pillar and they had a community engagement pillar. So those were all the pillars under which they felt their purpose can be magnified and manifested. And every decision that they make was aligned with each of those different pillars. So organizations that are very intentional about ensuring that their purpose or mission is accounted for in their strategy, that there's a way that they're going to measure performance and also build their bench strength to be able to perform optimally, and then have an intentionality around how they will be profitable. When all of those things are synergistic and we're intentional about focus on it, those are the ones who can there's that kind of that interface with all three: purpose, performance, and profit.
I like that. So, and I know that we organizations can easily tell when they are following their purpose, but what are the signs that an organization has lost connection to its purpose? What do you say to that?
So, two things. One, you ask them, show me your mission. Two, you walk down the hallway and you ask the employees, what is the mission of your organization and what role do you play in it? Simple.
And they can give you
There's
something different, huh? Don't even, or don't know at all.
don't know it all. And so that to me, that tells it all. If you have been intentional about the culture that you're creating, if you're intentional about ensuring that your purpose is manifested through the people that serves your organization, then it doesn't matter who I tap on the shoulder, they'll be able to articulate it. They may not have the exact verbiage, but they get the essence of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so that to me is where you see the alignment between purpose and or an organization's mission and the people. And how you get there, again, it goes back to the infrastructure. What are your reward and accountability structure? What does that look like? What is your succession plan? What does that look like? What is the relationship with your key stakeholders within and outside the organization? What's the relationship with your board? All of those things matter, and we can't leave none of it to chance. And so when you're intentional about each of those different areas, that's where you start to see purpose really speak out loud, and no one even has to, people can say it in their sleep because it's that entrenched in the culture.
And I hear you. I hear you. So, how does purpose driven leadership create a competitive advantage in today's marketplace? Because we all want to be front rock, we don't want to be laggers, We want to be
Right.
front runners in our industry.
So being purpose driven, what it drives is consistency. Sometimes when you're in the market and people aren't able to identify you because you're not clear on your purpose, you're not clear on your brand promise, then yeah, you're going to get left behind. But those organizations that are purpose driven, meaning that everything that faces internally and externally, it has your fingerprint on it, and it's consistent. How your customers, how your clients, how your patients experience you is very consistent. And so that's what helps organizations to kind of catapult within the markets that they serve. And of course, you have to have quality. Quality has to be a part of your algorithm, as you're facing the market and you're competing in the market. But intentionality to be purpose driven is key to it, and consistency is key. Can't let culture be happenstance. And a lot of times people just let culture just evolve how it evolves. Well, your culture is going to eat strategy every single day if you're not intentional about how you build it. And so having those important pillars in place to help inform your purpose is what helps organizations last and sustain.
Absolutely. And I tell people that culture are your people, practices, and norms.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not this little standalone word where it's actually a
Mm-mm.
being.
Right.
No, it is your people, your practices, and your norms. And so let's talk about organizational culture and then
Mm-hmm.
moving that. So we're going to talk about transformation as well. So since you brought it up, many organizations talk about culture, but few successfully transform it. Why is culture change so difficult? What are your thoughts on that?
Few things. Culture change is difficult because it's hard, and organizations are not patient. It used to be the statistics would say it takes about 5 years for change to really be galvanized in an organization. Nowadays, you can't wait 5 years. You're on an 18-month, 3-year trajectory. And even in that time frame, organizations don't have patience because business is moving at the speed of light, and they feel like they don't have the time to invest the time in building culture. But what happens when they don't take the time is that they sacrifice. It's about the long game. And in organizations, because business is moving so quickly, they're really focused on the short game. And so organizational culture, the organizations aren't patient. Two, is that they lack an intentionality behind it. So when we think about the culture that we want, it's important that organizations do their due diligence around defining, well, what is that? What type of environment do we want people to feel like they can thrive in? And what resources, tools that we need to wrap around that so that we can ensure that it's something that can be supported? And then ask your people. Ask your people what it is, what type of environment helps them to thrive. And then begin to cultivate that. The other piece of it is how are you bringing in your talent? How are you developing your talent? There's
Mm-hmm.
so many different avenues to culture cultivation that organizations don't think about, because that's not what they're trained to do. Business psychologists, we're trained to think about all of that. So we think about process, systems, and people and
Yep.
structure. That's what we think about. And so when we're helping organizations navigate through change, we have all the tools to help organizations think in all those four different realms of impacting culture. And then the other piece is we get comfortable. And when we start to get comfortable, we lax. And so you'll start to see, people will have their people take employee engagement surveys and think that's a culture survey. There's two totally different things, but that's a whole nother conversation. But they have people take different assessments, and then they may have a couple of years where the data comes back that, wow, our people are happy. And so then they take their foot off the pedal. And it's in those moments, it's the hardest to sustain it. it's easier to get there than it is to sustain it. And so sometimes when they get there, they're thinking, okay, I can take my foot off the pedal because we got this. No, the work is just beginning. So it's the hard part of, of truly entrenching culture is patience, having the infrastructure to build that culture, and then making sure that you have a plan to sustain it over the long haul. And how do you measure it? Now, there are culture assessments out there different than an employee engagement survey, but there are assessments out there that you can keep your finger on the pulse in terms of the thing that we said is important for us to build in this community of people. How do we know we've gotten there? What are the indicators that we're lagging? And what are the indicators that we're successful? And so all of those things are important when we think about culture.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So I believe you answered a few of these, but let's talk about what are the most common mistakes leaders make when attempting cultural transformation. You've named a few of them. They take their foot off the gas, meaning they get comfortable, or they're not measuring at all, not checking with their people. What other things would you add to that as a most common mistakes leaders make when attempting cultural transformation?
Being able to have the tough conversations. That's one of when I'm brought into organizations, that's one of the things that they point to most is we have inefficiency in terms of how we're having these conversations. We lack the ability to have difficult discussions. So I would say that's one of the biggest mistakes is people don't have accountability conversations. And part of the reason that happens is because we put people into leadership roles, but don't equip them with the ability to lead. We put people in leadership roles because they were great in their functional role, but we have not done our due diligence to assess, well, are they going to be effective as a leader? And so we put them in that role. And now we wonder, well, why is the department floundering? Well, you didn't wrap the appropriate amount of resources or develop this person so that they can do the things that you're expecting them to do as leaders. And so having those difficult conversations about accountability is tough for them. Because one, they think, I don't want to make it worse. Two, oh, it's really not that bad. Three, it may correct itself. And so those are all those fallacies in thinking that really it compromises building a desired culture.
Yeah, and it spreads like a virus as
Oh my
well.
goodness.
Yeah. So while you sitting there thinking it's not that bad, you and turnover and absenteeism increase, all kinds of other metrics are just going off of the haywire that you're not paying
Mhm.
attention to, which is tied to the fact that we fail to hold people accountable, well,
Right.
providing the resources to properly do their job and then fail to hold them accountable. So
And the piece of it
absolutely.
is when it gets to a point where it's really bad, now they feel like, well, we are in tough times right now. I can't accommodate having a hole in my department. Like it's better for me just to keep this toxic person here versus letting them go. Because if I let them go, it's going to cause a whole host of other issues. Again, that short game thinking. We got to think about the long game,
Mm-hmm.
not the short game. And you let that person sit there long enough, it sets up like disease in the department. Now we think about our low performers in our organizations. They're about maybe 10, 15%, if we're lucky. And that 10, 15% can really impact the other um,
80 to
80%
90.
of our
Yeah, 80.
bench.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a small, they should represent only a very, very small, if any, percent of our bench. But when it goes unaddressed, it permeates that toxicity permeates the rest of the department. And so yeah, you say you can't afford to let them go, but you can't afford to keep them either.
Nope. Nope. And by the time people realize that, it's too late.
Too
You don't
late.
lost some critical talent,
Hmm.
intellectual property done walked out of the door. Some people, the worst thing that can happen is people still on the job, but they quit really
Yeah.
mentally and emotionally, and they still there because they're not productive at all. Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the team structure because most of us work in a team structure. And so,
Hmm.
what role does trust, we throw that word around a lot, trust, play in creating high performing teams?
Hmm. So if we think about Patrick Lencioni's work, um, and the five dysfunctions of team, trust is at the foundation. And based on my experience that I've had with working internally with organizations and externally as a consultant, trust is absolutely at the foundation because you can't build on anything else if there's a lack of trust. There's no commitment if there's no trust. There's not healthy dialogue and debate if there's no trust. There's no psychological safety if there's no trust. There's no profitability if there's no trust. And so it everything else builds off of trust. The I love this quote that says, and trust isn't in it, but it still applies. Um, it says actually air, trust is like air. You don't know that it's there, but you absolutely know that it's there when it's gone. Like when it's gone, then it's the only thing you can feel. But when it's there, you don't think about it. But when it's gone, it's all you think about. And that's the same thing with trust.
Mm-hmm.
It's there when you have it there, you don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's gone, it's all you recognize, it's all you see, it's all you feel. And so one of the things that leaders do is they focus on building it. And they focus on once they build it, how do I sustain it? But what do you do when it's broken? And a lot of times leaders don't have the ability to understand what to do when it's broken. And so with trust, to repair it, it's simple, but we think it's complicated. Own the stuff that you own, honor that, talk about the elephant in the room, co-create a plan with the team on how do we build a trusting environment or how do we rebuild a trusting environment. Recognize that people are going to test it at the beginning because they're like, okay, trust ain't here. So
Mm-hmm.
we this lip service,
Yep.
or are we really doing the are we really building this thing called trust? And so leaders have to be patient and they have to be consistent in the co-creation of the strategy, seeing it through. Um, but it's not going to happen overnight when it's broken. And so you just got to stay the course and not be frustrated when it feels like, dag nabbit, we've been working on rebuilding this trust thing for the last 4 months and it doesn't seem to be working. Well, it when you break it, it takes so much more for it to be rebuilt, but you got to be consistent. Got to be consistent.
And you didn't break it overnight.
Didn't break it overnight.
Yep. So it's not going to be fixed overnight.
Nope. And
I
because
loved it. Yep.
people give grace, right? Like they're like if we do something as leaders that may not be the best thing, right? It doesn't align
Mm-hmm.
with a posture of a leader. People will give grace, like, okay, I'll let you have that one,
Yep. Yep.
right? I'll let you have that one. So, but if it keeps happening where you're breaking the trust, now they're like, hold on now.
Yep.
First time, shame on you. Second time,
Shame on me if I
shame
don't
on
say
me.
something. Yep, absolutely. And that's even that accountability factor. When you don't hold people accountable, people are watching and they say, oh, okay, she ain't say nothing now. But when you keep not saying anything, like, what is going on here? What is going
Right.
on here? So, yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk a little bit about human behavior because that's my
Hmm.
next set of questions. I got a few questions I want to ask on that. But I want to talk about your research because I am always intrigued by doctoral research. And so,
Hmm.
my, my Sleuthing says your doctoral research focused on employee engagement in healthcare settings doing, and I have VUCA environments.
Yes.
So you're gonna tell me what VUCA is because I didn't
Yes.
put any side notes in the margin what that was. What were some of your most important findings? Is the question that I wrote, though.
Okay, so I'll answer that first question. VUCA. So VUCA is it's a term that was birthed out of the military school, and it's a term that describes an environment in which you're in. So VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so I wanted
Mm,
to explore how do we, in healthcare settings, bolster employee engagement when they're in the toughest environment. And my research was conducted in the heart of COVID. And so I was able to have some really interesting conversations with people around what does it take to enhance their engagement in really tough times. And there were seven key findings that came out of it. So I'll just share a few. So one element was leadership. Leadership was a really important area for organizations to focus on in order to help bolster engagement in a really tough environment. And what they mean by it is not leadership from the perspective of have pizza parties for us. No, that's not what people are interested in. In those tough environments, they want to know that they have a leader who has their back. They want to know that they have a leader that sees them as a person. They want to have a leader who makes their job easier in those really tough times. So again, this was in healthcare. And one of the examples, simple, was if you see me drowning and there are a bunch of different patient call lights going off, why don't you take those for me? At least a couple. I'm not asking you to do my job. I'm just asking you to see me that I am
mhm,
overwhelmed and I need help. So that was one. Leadership was another one. Well-being was another one. And well-being was because during that time, you can imagine people were at wits end, especially in healthcare, because of all that was happening. And so well-being was one that they felt like was important. If you see me overwhelmed, tap me on the shoulder and just say, "Hey, go take 15 minutes. I'll cover your patients for now." um, or if you see that our equipment is not working properly, instead of me stressing out about it, just handle what needs to be handled with that equipment, because that helps with my sanity as a caregiver. And the other piece was how do we, so I coined the term co-protecting well-being. And what I meant by co-protecting well-being, yes, individuals, they have to know what they need in order to thrive, but it's also important that that leader co-protects that well-being. And so if the organization is coming and saying, okay, we need these 5 changes done in the next 2 weeks, that leader has to understand by co-protecting well-being, it's, you know what, my team already has 10 that you gave us last week. Out of these priorities that you now have 15 in front of us, what can you take off of the table? That's
mhm.
co-protecting well-being. So those were the top two areas that came out in my research is leadership and co-protecting well-being were the two biggest areas that was part of my research. And so from there, I created a kind of leadership model called VUCA Strong Leadership, because I thought after having these conversations, I thought it was important that we relook at how do we develop our leaders within really difficult environments. And so my model takes into account several things. The first thing is at the foundation, it's leader of self. So as a leader, how do I build myself? How do I build my own capability and capacity? So that's at the foundation. And then the different roles of a leader is leader as facilitator, so removing barriers that impedes work. Leader as protector, which is managing cadence of change, safeguarding their employees' well-being. Leader as inspirer is encouraging development, encouraging upward movement if that's what people are interested in, providing them with the resources to navigate those changes. And then finally, leader as business scholar. How do you make decisions within your business based on your financials? How do you make decisions in your within your work based on what the different analytics are telling you? And so those are the different elements of the VUCA strong leadership model that I created. So then there's a curriculum that is built that takes leaders through each of these different realms of being a VUCA strong leader. I know that was a long answer.
I love it, but I hope you got all that trademarked and everything because I love it,
Yes.
love it, love it. And
It,
I can't imagine even writing my doctoral doing the height of the COVID, the pandemic too, and being in healthcare. I mean, those were really the heroes. I mean,
yes.
during that time, I just said to myself, I was like, Lord, I thank God that that wasn't an industry I went into because I always thought that if you ever wanted to have a job going to
Is
healthcare,
with
they will
healthcare.
always need someone in healthcare, whether you be a nurse or work in the lab or whatever, you will always have a job. But then when COVID hit, it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, people left in droves, um, which was interesting because of how difficult it was. And so the other
Hmm.
challenge because of that was staffing. And staffing from the perspective of now you have all these agency people in the organization. And so you talk about culture, it in a lot of places it was out the door because it was survival of the fittest at that point. And you have
Hmm.
external, staffing
Yeah.
agencies coming in, staffing your floors. They don't care what kind of culture you trying to
Don't
build.
care about the rules or
They just want
nothing.
their $10,000 sign-on bonus that they were promised, and let me do my stuff and let me keep it moving.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk about where there are opportunities and we may have fallen short as an organization. And so, why do so many employee engagement initiatives fail to produce lasting results? What are your thoughts on that? Because you
You know
mentioned
what?
surveys and surveys a number of times. And so, why do some of these initiatives miss the mark?
Man, I can go on for days with this one. So let me think of where I can go. So okay, so the high level response is I think that we have it wrong in terms of how we build our strategy around employee engagement. Oftentimes organizations say, well, here's the leader engagement is based on the leader. The leader, you are responsible for the engagement of your team. It is your job to motivate these people. Okay, that's part of it, but that's not all of it. But organizations approach it as if it's the leader's responsibility. No, actually, the leaders are responsible for part of it. The organization is responsible for part of it, and the employee is responsible for part of it. That's the part that we miss. We don't talk about the role that the employee plays in their own engagement. Gallup just came out with their recent research that says leaders are responsible for 70% of engagement. Okay, well, who owns the other 30? And so the employee, they have a role in it. Oftentimes, these surveys come out, the results come out, leaders are beating themselves up about what the results say, and they're taking it personal. They're crying like they're just losing it because of these results. But and the reason why it's so difficult is because we have not figured out how to share the responsibility of creating environments where people want to show up every day. And employees have an important part of that. So I think that's a big part of it is we don't there is a lopsided responsibility perception about who owns engagement. If we really want to make a difference in engagement, we have to understand what the organization's role is, what the leader's role is, and what the employee's role is.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I just had a similar conversation. It was about professional development, the
Mm,
shared responsibility of professional development. The streets will tell you that it is the employer's responsibility to pay for everything. No, because when you walk out the door, you take that knowledge with you. So it's your response. You have a responsibility to keep current. You have a responsibility to stay abreast of what's going on in your industry, keep abreast of what the competitors are doing. Some of those things, some of those certifications and different things like that, you're going to take that when you walk out of the door. So why wouldn't you invest in yourself? So I
yeah.
had that exact same conversation with a different topic, and it was professional
Mm,
development. And people don't look at it that way.
mm-mm.
And they will stand you down. And even when they know what you're saying is correct, they still, they don't want to own it 100% that it's a
No,
shared responsibility,
right.
but it is so true.
It's definitely true. I think the other thing where we get in trouble is how we what we do with the information from the survey. I have seen so often where that survey is weaponized and you have organizations say if you are in, let's say, a tier 3 leader, I won't say the vendor who uses that terminology, but if you're a tier 3 leader for 3 years in a row, you're going to lose your job. And I think that that's dangerous to place to say that a leader is going to lose their job because of the employee engagement survey.
Hmm.
It's important that you look at employee engagement as an indicator, but what are your other indicators? What are the other KPIs you're looking at to determine this leader's effectiveness or ineffectiveness? Have you looked at what you've done as an organization to position this leader to be successful?
Yep.
How are we holding these employees accountable for the toxic environment that's being created? Like it's all of the things, but we want to take this one size fits all approach to addressing the issue, and it's not that simple. You really have to look at it case by case to see what's really at the underpinning of what's happening, and one survey isn't going to be the indicator of that. Like it'll lead you into other places to explore, but
Hmm.
it shouldn't be the only decision maker about somebody's employment.
I love it. So, you're talking my jam. I can speak to you forever, but I get hit over the head if I go too much longer. And so I have a couple of closing questions for you. And then I want you to tell the Sister Leaders community what you have going on, how they can connect with you, anything that they can support you in. If you're going to be somewhere, you're selling anything, you got something out there on Amazon or whatever it is, just share. So my first closing, it's like a pastor. So this is my closing before the closing. So my first closing question is, what legacy do you hope
Mm.
your work leaves for future generations of leaders?
Ooh, that's a good one. My legacy. So what I want generations coming up behind me to know and understand, first thing is be clear about who you are at your core, and stand 10 toes down in that and what that is in terms of who you are as an individual. Understand your purpose. Go on that discovery journey. Don't allow what's happening in social media and everywhere else to dictate what your purpose is. It's in you. You just have to go through that discovery process to figure out what that is. And then two is it's okay if you go first, meaning as you're exploring things that you're passionate about, as you're exploring your purpose, and you're getting clear about what mark you're intended to make in this world, it's okay if you're the first one to go, because that is an indicator that you are going to be the trailblazers for those who are going to come behind you. Is it lonely? Absolutely. But does it have impact? Absolutely. Is it worth it? You better believe it. And then the third thing is have fun doing it. Like
Yes.
have fun doing your craft, because when you start to get clear on your purpose and you're standing 10 toes down in it and you're trailblazing, there's a beauty in that. There's a liberty in that. So as you're going through that, have fun. Have fun doing it.
And she is smiling as she say that. For those of you who are listening and not looking, she is smiling as she say that. So here's my real closing question, like the past them, my real closing. What is one belief about leadership that you once held strongly, but have completely changed your mind about now? This is more about evolution.
We alluded to it at the beginning of our conversation. And so I used to think that being a leader was about hierarchy. Being a leader was about um, how many people that you get to lead, or how many direct reports that you have. And over time, I've learned that leadership it's not about that. It's about having a compelling vision. It's about having the ability to inspire people to want to align with that vision to the point that they say, you know what? I know that you've thought through this. I know you've done the work. And so I'm willing to go with you to whatever height that you're going to go, because I know that what's at the top of that is something that's going to be epic and amazing. So it's about position to me, in terms of leadership, and it's about influence. And I feel like, as a leader, from an influential perspective, um, I have the ability to change the world, however I define that. And it's not about how many people report to me, so to
Yep,
speak. So that's how my thinking about leadership has evolved. And that's what influences how I coach leaders. It's, yeah, what's your posture as a leader? What legacy are you trying to lead? And what's your reputation? That's what it's about.
absolutely, absolutely. Love this interview. And so now Dr. Tish is going to tell you how you can stay connected to her, how you can look her up, how you can follow her, how you can get all, I love this stuff about human behavior, the mind and the workplace. She's speaking my jam here. So, and I know it's the same for some of you out there. And so if you could tell the Sister Leaders community how they can stay in contact with you, some things that you have going on, and if you need support in anything, how they can do that as well.
Awesome. Well, first I want to thank you, Dr. Karen, for this time. I've enjoyed our conversation. I can't believe we're almost done. I just enjoyed this conversation, and I want to thank the sister leaders for allowing me this space, so that you can, hear our conversation and get to know me a bit. Where I'm at in my career right now and in my space, it's about what I get to do, not what I have to do. And so, what I get to do now is reimagine what it looks like to engage with the communities that I get to serve. And so what I'm going to be doing is launching a new podcast series that really builds on the research from my dissertation. And so I would really love to be able to connect with the sister leaders and invite people to that conversation. So that's one. Two, you can reach out to me via my LinkedIn. It's Dr. Laticia Tish Thompson, on LinkedIn, or my website, is www.legacy-blueprint.com. And I would love to be able to have conversations that similar to what we've had today around culture, change, purpose, performance, and profit.
Love it, love it, love it. And look, that is a good segue into this year's conference theme. And so our conference theme is purpose led profit focus. And if you look at the order of it, purpose is before profit. And so that is all Dr. Karen, because Dr. Karen believe, and I can't subscribe to what other people believe. But you just heard Dr. Tish say the same thing, that I believe when you lead with your purpose, everything else follows. So I know at least one other person who believes in that with me. But that is this year's conference. And so I will get hit in the head by my teams if I didn't mention it. We are back at the Rivers Casino. This is year 3 at the Rivers Casino. This is year 6 for the conference. We hope to sell out again this year. And so I would encourage you to go ahead and save the date, arrange your travel, because we're going to be in the house October 2nd and 3rd in Portsmouth, Virginia. And you're going to have brilliant individuals such as Dr. Tish and others who are going to be sharing their lane of brilliance and sharing their information. Because, I'm all about impact and influence, because I'm too old to be thinking about some of the stuff I thought about in my 20s. I got the cars, the shoes, and all of that stuff. I'm too old for all that. So now I'm all about helping my fellow sister leader, helping her get there quicker with less bruises than what I got as I was learning my way through entrepreneurship and through corporate America. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about who's going to be in the house. I'm excited about who's going to be live streaming with our global community. And I'm excited to hear more of the expertise of our brilliant sister leaders, such as those like Dr. Tish. And so the conference website is sisterleadersconference.com, just in case you've been under a rock somewhere. Sisterleadersconference.com is where you'll find everything, and my team is diligently working on updating the website, so that'll be updated in the next couple of weeks for 2026, but you can still buy tickets and everything. And so I'm excited. I'm always excited when I can play in this sandbox called life with intelligent people who are talking about people, processes, and systems, which are the
Yeah.
3 bullet points in my life, as I continue to navigate in this place called leadership. And as Dr. Tish says, culture, these culture environments. And so this is fun for me. I can do this
Yep.
all day, every
Me
day. So
too.
I'm not gonna bore some of you other people who can't, but so I'm gonna bid you good night and see you next time. Bye.